spent 7 years caring for a woman who was never sick. Not really. But I didn't know that until I watched her face drain of color as I held up her medical records at the charity fundraiser she organized for her fake illness. The one where she introduced me as her assistant, not her partner. Not the man who had given up his career, his savings, and his dignity to take care of her. It started on a Tuesday morning. I remember because the coffee pot had broken the night before, and I was making pour-over coffee when Melissa came into the kitchen. The light through our apartment windows was soft, casting long shadows across the counter. The kettle whistled. Outside, the sounds of the city waking up. Car doors, distant conversations, the rumble of garbage trucks filtered through the glass. She looked tired. That wasn't unusual. For the past few months, she'd been complaining about fatigue, mysterious pains, dizzy spells. We'd been to 3 doctors already with no clear diagnosis. I poured the hot water over the grounds, watching the coffee drip slowly into the mug below. "James," she said, her voice slightly shaky. "I need to talk to you." I looked up. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine. They darted around, settling somewhere near my shoulder. Her fingers twisted the sleeve of her robe, a nervous habit I'd noticed becoming more frequent. "What is it?" I asked, sliding her mug across the counter. "Bad night? I saw Dr. Mercer yesterday. She took the coffee but didn't drink it. He thinks it might be multiple sclerosis." The world stopped. I remember the steam rising from my coffee, suspended in the air like time itself had frozen. MS, a progressive, unpredictable disease, potentially debilitating. "Are you sure?" I asked. "What tests did he run?" "Blood work, MRI." Her voice was small. "He said the results were concerning. We need to do more tests, but he wanted me to be prepared." I walked around the counter and wrapped my arms around her. She felt small against my chest, fragile. I kissed the top of her head. "We'll get through this," I said. "Whatever it takes." I meant it. Every word. I had no idea those words would cost me 7 years of my life. The changes were gradual. First, it was doctor's appointments. I took time off work to drive her, sit in waiting rooms, take notes. Then it was medications. Pills lined up on the bathroom counter, each with its own schedule and side effects I needed to monitor. I researched MS obsessively, joined support groups, reorganized our apartment to make it more accessible as her mobility declined. 6 months in, I reduced my hours at work. After a year, I quit altogether. We agreed it made more sense. Her condition was unpredictable. She needed care. And my software engineering skills meant I could do some freelance work from home. It wasn't ideal, but we'd manage. We had savings. We had each other. The symptoms came and went. Some days she could barely get out of bed. Other days she seemed almost normal, though always careful to mention the invisible symptoms. The fatigue, the pain, cognitive fog that no one else could see. I never questioned it. Why would I? She was sick. She needed me. 3 years in, our savings were dwindling. The medical bills, the specialized equipment, the organic foods she insisted would help, it all added up. My freelance work brought in some money, but not enough. Melissa suggested starting a blog about her journey with MS. It could help others, she said. And maybe we could get some sponsors or donations to help with the medical costs. It seemed reasonable, noble even. I built her website, took photos, edited her posts. The blog gained traction. She was good at telling her story. The brave woman fighting an invisible disease, the daily struggles, the small victories. People responded. They sent messages of support, shared their own stories. Some sent money. The first donation was $50, then $100, then $500 from someone whose mother had MS. The money helped, and Melissa's spirit seemed to lift with each new follower, each new donation. I was happy to see her engaged with something, finding purpose in her illness. 4 years in, the blog became a social media presence. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Melissa documenting her MS journey for thousands of followers. She started getting free products from companies making everything from supplements to mobility aids. She was invited to speak at events. I drove her, carried her equipment, managed the technical aspects. In photos, I was always just out of frame, a supportive partner, mentioned but rarely seen. I didn't mind being in the background. This was her story, her struggle. I was just grateful that she had found a way to cope, to transform her pain into something meaningful. And the attention seemed to be good for her. On days when she had an interview or photo shoot, her symptoms often improved dramatically. Too dramatically, I would later realize. The first crack in the facade appeared on a rainy Sunday afternoon, 5 years into Melissa's diagnosis. I was organizing her medications for the week, a task I'd done hundreds of times before. The little plastic compartments, the careful counting of pills, the reminder alarms set on both our phones. It was as much a part of our routine as brushing teeth. I opened the bottle of Tecfidera, her main MS medication, expensive even with insurance, and noticed something odd. The pill count was off. Way off. Based on when we'd last refilled the prescription, there should have been at least 20 pills left. There were 35. "Melissa?" I called out, pill bottle in hand. "Did you get the Tecfidera refilled early?" She was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, probably checking her social media metrics. She'd become obsessive about engagement rates and follower counts. "What?" she said, not looking up. "The Tecfidera. Did you get it refilled? There are more pills here than there should be." A brief pause, just a second too long. "Oh yeah. The pharmacy called. Said there was some issue with the insurance, and they wanted to make sure I had enough until it got sorted out." It sounded plausible. Insurance companies were always finding new ways to make healthcare more complicated. I put the pills in their compartments and thought nothing more of it. Until 2 weeks later, when I found an unfamiliar prescription bottle tucked in the back of her nightstand drawer. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a spare charger. And there it was. A bottle of pills prescribed to Melissa by a doctor I'd never heard of. Dr. Alan Rothman. The medication wasn't one I recognized from her MS regimen. I Googled it. Lorazepam, an anti-anxiety medication, prescribed 3 months ago. We shared everything about her medical care. I went to every appointment. I tracked every medication, or so I thought. Why would she hide this from me? And who was Dr. Rothman? I put the bottle back exactly where I found it and said nothing. But I started paying attention. More attention than I had in years, if I'm being honest. When you're caring for someone with a chronic illness, you develop a kind of selective vision. You see what you need to see to provide care, and you respect their privacy with everything else. It's a balance, being attentive without being intrusive. But now I was noticing things, like how Melissa's symptoms always seemed worse when we were alone, better when we had company or she was on camera. How she used her cane religiously for her social media posts, but often forgot it when moving around the house. How her doctor's appointments always seemed to be scheduled when I had a freelance deadline or some other commitment that prevented me from attending. "I don't want to burden you with every appointment," she'd say. "You do so much already." I started keeping track. A small notebook hidden in my desk drawer. Dates, times, symptoms reported, medications taken, inconsistencies, questions. 6 months of this, and the notebook filled with red flags. But I still couldn't bring myself to believe what it was suggesting. This was Melissa, my partner, the woman I'd restructured my entire life around. She wouldn't lie about something like this. She couldn't. Then came the charity event. It was Melissa's idea, a fundraiser for MS research, but with a personal twist. Part of the proceeds would go toward her own medical expenses. She'd built enough of a following that local businesses were willing to donate items for a silent auction. A venue offered their space at a discount. Melissa designed merchandise. T-shirts, tote bags, wristbands, with her blog logo and slogans about fighting MS. "It's going to be amazing," she said, showing me the event page she'd created. "We already have over 200 people confirmed. And look, the local news wants to do a feature on it." I smiled and said all the right things. But inside, my stomach churned. The notebook in my desk drawer was now accompanied by a folder. A folder containing printouts of text messages I'd found on her iPad. Messages to someone named Claire about keeping the story straight and making sure James doesn't find out. Messages about how much money the fundraiser could bring in. Messages about how they could take it to the next level after this event. "I need your help with something for the fundraiser," Melissa said, breaking into my thoughts. "I need you to manage the technical side, the presentations, the donation platform, all of that. You'll be like my assistant for the evening." Assistant, not partner. Not the man who had given up everything to care for her. her assistant. Sure, I said. Whatever you need. 2 weeks before the fundraiser, I took a step I'd been avoiding. I called her insurance company. It took some doing. Privacy laws meant they couldn't tell me much. But I had been managing her claims for years, had all her login information. I was able to get a list of all medical providers who had billed under her policy in the past year. Dr. Mercer was there, her supposed MS specialist. But there were 3 other neurologists I'd never heard of, and no record of an MRI in the time period when she claimed to have received her initial diagnosis. I sat at my desk, staring at the printout. My hands were shaking. This couldn't be happening. I called Dr. Mercer's office next. Said I needed copies of Melissa's records for another specialist. They were happy to help, with a signed release form. I forged Melissa's signature. I'm not proud of that, but by then, I needed to know. The records arrived by secure email 3 days later. I read them in our home office, door locked, while Melissa was at a treatment appointment. Dr. Mercer had never diagnosed her with MS. In fact, his notes specifically stated, "Patient presents with symptoms suggestive of MS, but all diagnostic criteria negative." Discussed possible psychosomatic origins of symptoms. Referred to Dr. Rothman for psychological evaluation. The room spun. 7 years. 7 years of my life caring for a disease that didn't exist. But I still needed more. Concrete proof. Something irrefutable. I found it in a series of text messages between Melissa and her friend Claire. The same Claire from the earlier messages. I hadn't met Claire in person, but I knew she was a regular commenter on Melissa's social media, always supportive, always reinforcing Melissa's narrative. The messages went back years. In them, Melissa openly discussed faking symptoms, scheduling fake appointments, and even methods for making herself appear ill for photos and videos. "James is so gullible," one message read. "He never questions anything. It's almost too easy." And then, about the upcoming fundraiser. "After this, we'll have enough to really start living. No more pretending to be sick just for the basics. We can take this show on the road." I printed everything. The medical records, the insurance claims, the text messages. I put it all in a folder, and I waited. The night of the fundraiser arrived. The venue was beautiful. A renovated industrial space with exposed brick walls and string lights crisscrossing the ceiling. About 250 people filled the room, many wearing the t-shirts Melissa had designed. A projection screen displayed a slideshow of Melissa's journey with MS, photos I had taken over the years, carefully curated to show her at her most vulnerable, her most inspirational. Melissa wore a maxi dress that showed off the tattoo she'd gotten last year, the MS awareness ribbon on her wrist. Her hair and makeup were professionally done. She used her cane, moving slowly among the guests, accepting hugs and well wishes with gracious smiles. I worked the technical side as promised. Laptop connected to the projector, donation software running smoothly, microphones tested and ready. The perfect assistant. Halfway through the evening, Melissa took the stage. The room quieted. She adjusted the microphone, leaning on her cane with practiced vulnerability. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began. 7 years ago, I received news that changed my life forever. Multiple sclerosis. 2 words that rewrote my future. She paused, looking down as if gathering strength. "But I've never been alone in this fight. I've had all of you. My online family, my supporters, my friends." Another pause, a carefully timed smile. "And I've had James, my assistant, who's been by my side through it all." The audience applauded. Some looked my way, nodding appreciatively. The helpful assistant, the support staff to the main attraction. "Tonight," Melissa continued, "we're not just raising money for MS research. We're declaring that this disease doesn't define us, that we can still create meaningful lives despite its challenges. And with your help, I can continue my treatments, continue sharing my journey, and continue inspiring others facing similar battles." More applause. Melissa wiped away a tear, a move I'd seen her practice in the bathroom mirror that morning. "And now," she said, "I'd like to share a video documenting these past 7 years. My journey, our journey." She nodded to me, my cue to start the video she'd prepared. Instead, I picked up a microphone from the tech table. "Actually," I said, my voice echoing through the room, "I'd like to say a few words first, if that's okay." Melissa's smile faltered, just slightly. Confusion flickered across her face. This wasn't part of the plan. Of course, she said, her voice tight. My assistant would like to say something. I walked to the stage, carrying my folder. The room was silent. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. I'm not Melissa's assistant, I said when I reached the microphone. I'm her partner, or at least I was. For 7 years, I've dedicated my life to caring for Melissa. I quit my job. I spent our savings. I researched treatments, managed medications, drove to appointments, and built her online presence. I did all this out of love, because I believed she was suffering from a devastating illness. Melissa's face had gone very still. Her knuckles were white where she gripped her cane. But Melissa doesn't have MS, I continued, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. She never did. A murmur went through the crowd. Melissa stepped toward me, reaching for the microphone, her face a mask of outrage. James, this is inappropriate. You're clearly upset about something, but this isn't the time or place. I have the medical records, I said, opening the folder. From Dr. Mercer, the doctor who supposedly diagnosed you. Except he didn't. In fact, he specifically noted that all MS diagnostic criteria were negative. He referred you to a psychiatrist, not a neurologist. I held up the papers. Melissa's face drained of color. I also have records from your insurance company showing that you've been seeing multiple doctors, getting different medications, different diagnoses, creating a paper trail that doesn't add up. The room was dead silent now. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the faint buzz of the lights overhead. And I have these, I said, pulling out the printed text messages. Conversations between you and Claire, who I now realize isn't just an online supporter, but your accomplice. Conversations about faking symptoms, about how gullible I am, about how this fundraiser would give you enough money to really start living. Melissa lunged for the papers, but I stepped back. Her cane clattered to the floor. She didn't reach for it. Didn't seem to need it. James, these are obviously fake, she said, her voice rising. Someone is trying to frame me. You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing me. I thought you might say that, I replied. I turned to the audience. Claire is here tonight, isn't she? Claire Matthews? A woman in the third row stood up slowly. Early 30s, red, wearing one of Melissa's fundraiser t-shirts. Her face was pale. Claire, I said, would you like to tell everyone about the MS playbook you and Melissa created? Or should I read your messages aloud? Claire looked at Melissa, then back at me. Then, without a word, she grabbed her purse and walked quickly toward the exit. This is insane, Melissa said, but her voice had lost its confidence. I've been documenting my MS journey for years. There are hundreds of posts, videos, all carefully staged, I said. The symptoms that conveniently appear when you need attention and disappear when you need to function. The medications you throw away instead of taking. The doctors you've been lying to, playing them off each other so none of them have the complete picture. I turned back to the audience. I'm sorry to ruin this event. I truly am. Many of you have donated money, time, and support to Melissa. You believed her just like I did. But this isn't a fundraiser for MS research or for a sick woman's medical bills. This is a scam, and I couldn't let it continue. The room erupted. People stood up, shouting questions, demands for refunds, expressions of disbelief. Some rushed to Melissa's side, still believing her. Others pulled out their phones, undoubtedly posting about the dramatic scene unfolding. The charity event was imploding in real time. Melissa grabbed the microphone. This is a misunderstanding, she said, her voice shaking. James is confused. He's been under a lot of stress. My medical condition is real. I can provide proof. Like the MRI results you claimed to have 7 years ago? I asked. The ones that don't exist in any of your medical records? She stared at me, mouth open, no words coming out. Or maybe the MS specialist appointments you've been attending alone for the past year? The ones where you're actually meeting Claire to plan content for your blog? You've been spying on me, she finally managed to say. Invading my privacy. That's why I couldn't tell you everything. You're controlling, obsessive. It was the desperation play. Turning the tables, making herself the victim. I'd expected it. I have one more thing, I said, pulling out my phone. I turned to the audience again. For those who still have doubts, I recorded a conversation between Melissa and Claire yesterday. They were in our kitchen, planning how to maximize donations tonight. Planning how to use the money to expand their operation to other chronic illness communities. I pressed play. Melissa's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. After MS, we could do cancer. Cancer gets even more sympathy, more donations. We just need to research the symptoms better, get the medical terminology right. I didn't need to play more. Melissa's face said it all. The carefully constructed facade had crumbled completely. The venue has agreed to refund all ticket sales, I said to the crowd. The silent auction items will be returned to the businesses that donated them. And I've already reported the fraudulent fundraising to the relevant authorities. I set down the microphone and walked off the stage, past Melissa, who stood frozen, past the murmuring crowd, toward the exit. 7 years of my life gone. But at least I was walking away with the truth. The aftermath was predictably messy. Some of Melissa's most devoted followers refused to believe the evidence, claiming I had manipulated it all out of jealousy or control. But most people accepted the truth, especially after Claire, fearing legal consequences, came forward with a full confession. Melissa's social media empire collapsed overnight. The sponsorships disappeared. The speaking engagements were canceled. The donations dried up. She attempted a comeback with a tearful video claiming she had been misunderstood, that she really was sick, just with a different condition than she had claimed. Few believed her. I moved out the next day, taking only what was undeniably mine. I left the apartment we had modified for her condition, the grab bars in the bathroom, the adjustable bed, the specialized kitchen tools. I left the medications, the mobility aids, the symptom journals, the props for her performance. I found a small studio apartment across town, started applying for software engineering jobs again, explained the 7-year gap in my resume as taking time off for family health issues. Not a lie, technically. 3 months after the fundraiser, I received a letter from Melissa. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 2 sentences. I never meant for it to go so far. I'm sorry. No explanation. No real accountability. Just a vague apology that felt as hollow as her diagnosis had been. I threw the letter away. It's been a year now. I'm working again, rebuilding my career and my savings. I've made new friends, real ones, with authentic connections not built on lies or manipulation. I've even started dating, though cautiously. Trust doesn't come as easily as it once did. Sometimes I still catch myself automatically reaching for a pill organizer that isn't there, or scanning a room for accessibility issues that don't matter anymore. Old habits from a life that wasn't real. Last week, I was at a coffee shop when I overheard a woman at the next table talking about her chronic illness journey on social media. The familiar terminology, the careful balance of struggle and inspiration, the mention of a fundraiser. For a moment, my blood ran cold. Was it happening again? Was someone else being deceived? But then I saw the medical alert bracelet on her wrist, heard her discuss actual treatment protocols, with knowledge and specificity. Noticed the genuine fatigue in her eyes, not the performed kind I had become so familiar with. I finished my coffee and left without saying anything. Not every illness is fake. Not every request for support is manipulation. I won't let Melissa's deception make me cynical toward those who are genuinely suffering. But I will never again ignore the warning signs. Never again sacrifice my well-being for someone who views my compassion as a resource to be exploited rather than a gift to be treasured. The coffee pot in my new apartment is reliable. It makes one perfect cup at a time. Just enough for me. And every morning when I use it, I remember that Tuesday 7 years ago when Melissa came into the kitchen with her fictional diagnosis. How the old coffee pot had broken the night before. How I'd believed her completely. I keep the medical records, the ones that expose the truth, in a drawer in my desk. Not because I need them anymore, but as a reminder. Not of Melissa or her betrayal, but of my own strength. My ability to recognize the truth, even when it hurts. My courage to stand up and speak that truth, even when it would be easier to remain silent. The coffee pot, the medical records. Small anchors in a life rebuilt on honesty. I don't regret those 7 years. Not entirely. They taught me something valuable about myself. that I am capable of extraordinary compassion and sacrifice for someone I love. That's not a weakness. It's only a weakness when it's exploited by someone who doesn't deserve it. Now I save my compassion for those who do.